taking a look at the updated version of the Atlantic hurricane season, as there is many signs now of a very active hurricane season ahead of us. We got some new model data hinting at some tropical development in the early weeks of August, but there is much more proof to that with some of the forecast and data that I will be showing you. So let's get right into this video. So first, let's take a look at the National Hurricane Center. So far, there is nothing in the next 48 hours, and in the next 7 days, there is nothing to be said with the National Hurricane Center. But I do think they could be adding a new area near the Bahamas and just north of Puerto Rico, as there is a potential chance with our very trustworthy Euro model that has done pretty good in the last few years with the Atlantic hurricane season, that it's been sniffing at some tropical development, some model runs of a hurricane, some as a weak tropical depression, and some into just a tropical storm. Too early to know yet. If we look at the GFS model and the Canadian, they're not showing anything. The Canadian is probably the closest to the Euro, and that's just hinting out a very weak wave axis that flies through and then it doesn't even develop. So the only model that's hinting on this really is the Euro and the Euro ensembles, and we're going to have to see if the GFS and Canadian model hatch on through that system in the next few days. But the favorability and the climatology time for tropical development is on pace with the Euro model. So if we look at the Euro and look at climatology, it will make sense. And looking at the GFS model, by now we'll be looking at multiple fantasy hurricanes that would have went into the Gulf of Mexico or hit the Northeast by now. But this year, the GFS actually hasn't been showing any fantasy and has done a pretty interesting, good job at the Atlantic. Usually we always talk about the fantasy GFS, but this year it has not done that. Maybe once or twice, but it's been a very long time since the GFS has spit out a very strong fantasy storm. So now let's take a look at the Euro model that I'm talking about. So we take a look here. Let's just go 24 hours out. No, let's go 48 hours out, because that's with the National Hurricane Center. So there it is, a huge tropical wave that does come off the coast of Africa. And with the Saharan dust, it probably won't develop. But if we take this a little bit further, the wave continues to move through the Atlantic, tries to get its act together, but with the dry air, it is just not going to be enough. This is about July 28th at 8 p.m. and there's the tropical wave. Bermuda High up here. Showers and thunderstorms and a few waves that already went by that has never developed. But we continue to look, and with the Euro model, with the latest wave, this is that new wave that's coming off Africa. If we look a little bit further down, it does try to develop. As it gets closer to the Western Antilles, to Puerto Rico, we see some relaxing with the trade winds. We see some relaxing with the wind shear, according to the Euro. And the Euro's been the most bullish on this wave. And it does try and develop, goes just north of Puerto Rico. Right there, you can see, does develop a closed center. This is still uncertain. You guys have to remember, this is August 1st. We are only in August 24th. So we have a lot of time. Don't worry. Don't panic, because if you panic, then that's where the miscommunication that comes in. And all I want to say, just watch with the models, watch with the Euro, because tomorrow the Euro might not have nothing. Or maybe the GFS has now a storm in the Canadian. We have to wait a few days before we really start locking our thoughts in on this. And even when it develops, we're still going to have some uncertainty, just like Beryl. Beryl was a lot of uncertainty. Some models had to go into Central America. Some had to go into Mexico. Ended up going pretty far north in Texas as a Category 1, 80-mile-an-hour hurricane. So we take a look even more. We do get a tropical depression to develop just north of the Dominican Republic. And as we enter the Bahamas, there it is. It starts intensifying pretty quickly as a 1005 millibar storm. As it enters through 1001, 998. So that tells you there is probably less wind shear, not too much dry air. And the favorability with the waters, it's definitely there. But if we go 240 hours out, this storm starts lifting north. We do get a cold front slash trough here that might, if the Euro model that continue to go through, we might be able to see. But there's another little surface low that tries and develops in the Gulf. So if that was going to develop, this storm would have probably ride the coast and then went out to sea if it kept going, because you can already tell it started lifting a little bit north. But if the high pressure gets closer to the U.S., then this would have just went through the Florida Keys into the Gulf and maybe become a major hurricane. But like I was saying, we take a look at GFS at this exact time. You don't see nothing. And it doesn't even show the wave that well. You know, this is that 24 hours. The wave goes through and it doesn't develop. The dryer just chokes it off and it never becomes. And even if we look further out with the GFS, 300 hours plus, shows really nothing. The moisture field definitely gets a little bit more moisture, especially in the Gulf, off the Atlantic coast, just near the Western Antilles, the Caribbean. So maybe that's some signs of development, but we're going to have to see. Canadian, we look at 240 hours out, and it has just showers. Nothing to really look forward. There's the wave, gets through there, and then it just dies off. So we're going to have to see. The model's trying to pick up on it, but not too much. But let's take a look at some of the ensembles here. So let's go into... We're going to take a look at the GEFS ensembles and the European ensembles. What are they showing? All right, so European, actually let's take a look at the European. So we take a look at forecast hour 240, right? There it is. Let it load. Alright, this is just loading in. Just give it a second. Okay, right there. So there's the European ensembles. And this is a little worrying to me that we're really starting to see the Euro pick up on a lot of more ensembles than the 0Z. I mean, if we take a look here, we're going to have to see. The European has been just hatching on this. And some of the ensembles have a Category 1 hurricane. Some has a depression. Some going into there. But definitely tries to develop just north of the islands and Puerto Rico. That's the latest thinking. But we don't know. All right. We take a look at the 0Z runs. There it was. There was just a few 0Z runs. So I'm telling you, the trending with the Euro and the ensembles have been getting stronger and stronger. If we take a look at the GEFS on this, there's just nothing. There's not a single ensemble that is forecasting anything with this. So that's what I'm saying. We're going to have to see. But if we take a look at forecast hour 336, there's maybe just one ensemble there. Wrong area, global, Indian, North Atlantic. There it is. Is the GEFS shows maybe something in the Gulf with some ensembles. Some low pressures trying to develop in the MDR, but GFS honestly hasn't really shown anything. But that's besides the point. I'm just showing that there's chances. Alright. If we look at the SST anomalies in the Western Atlantic, it's a little bit worrying because the GFS does have a storm going just north of Puerto Rico. And look at these waters, by the way. We have a lot warmer waters than we did with Beryl. And it worries me that a Cat 5 hurricane did not stop the warming of the waters. And even in the Gulf, almost the whole Gulf is in 30 degrees Celsius. But where this storm could be going, if the Euro kept going with some of the ensembles in the Gulf, maybe just right near the Florida Keys and stuff, there is 32 degrees Celsius waters, you guys. With no wind shear and no dry air, we could have faced another Beryl type situation. All right, but even in better condition. That's why I'm really raising the alarm. I think this hurricane season is going to have like a 2017/2005 season. I think there's going to be probably a lot less names, at least maybe 20 names, but I think the quantity is going to be like the 2017 and 2005 season, but we're going to have to watch, all right? 2020 is known for the most names, but the quantity of the storms was not so strong. We did have quite a few major hurricanes, but a lot of them went out to sea. This year, a lot of these storms that I made in my other hurricane outlooks, they were too much. There were just too much information on that these storms could be moving a lot more west than it did in 2020. All right. But there's the waters, very warm waters. We look at the main development region, the tropical Atlantic, warming very quickly too. That's another alarming sign. The La Nina has been coming back too. It has made a comeback. We are sitting at negative 0.166. That's probably going to continue to drop. This is probably going to go up and then drop again. That's been the steady pace. Now since about July 1st, so it's been the last like a week, we have seen this trend. We take a look at the Gulf of Mexico. There it is. The water's pretty warm. The Caribbean, very warm right there. Atlantic MDR is warming up pretty quickly too. But that's what I'm saying. All right. The favorability is most likely to come. If we take a look at the Ensembles GFS phase diagram of the MJO, you tell the MJO in the long run does enter phases 8 and 1 and 7 and 2. Those phases are very favorable, especially 1 and 8. Like I say, it's Western Hemisphere and Africa. That tells us this is not good. The MJO is going to be much more favorable, and with the Euro showing up that tropical cyclone storm, whatever you want to call it, the MJO is actually favorable at that time. So maybe that's why the Euro's been showing it, the favorability. But if we take a look as we enter August 8th, this has changed over time. We're going to have to really look at that. Those are the Euro. The MJO is very favorable, all right? Climate system, there it is. By the August, some favorability is expected, and we're going to have to watch, all right? There's some of the more, especially as we get into September. September 2nd, the peak of hurricane season, the very, very favorable waters. But we take a look at the dry air and Saharan dust. There it is, the latest frame. A lot of dry air and Saharan dust out in the Atlantic. With that new wave, you could tell there is some less dry air in the atmosphere, as the Euro model shows in the later frames. But there's that huge plume of dust that's going to be going through the islands, maybe even reach Florida. So we're going to have to watch that. All right. One more thing I'm going to like to share to you guys is the favorability in the Atlantic right now. There is the tropical wave right there coming off Africa, very robust. And there is less with the environment getting better and better conditions. Just all depends in the next coming days how the system will thrive through the Atlantic. But this is the wave that we're going to have to watch as it gets in this region. Because this region, we've seen it with Dorian, we've seen it with Beryl. The favorability this Atlantic hurricane season can really lead into powerful storms. But that's the latest update on the tropics. We're going to have another update tomorrow. And see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night.